Who could the fourth manufacturer be to join NASCAR? Ty Majeski wins the Truck Series championship in dominating fashion. Plus, Christopher Bell thinks that NASCAR should put him back into the championship race. And Denny Hamlin's not sure if 2311 Racing will make it to the Daytona 500. Welcome back to Break Hard. I'm Matt. It is championship weekend. It is finally upon us, the last weekend of the NASCAR series until we get to, well, I guess the Clash February 2nd, but in Daytona a couple weeks after that. It's under 100 days now, 99 days until the Daytona 500, which is absolutely crazy. But during the State of the Sport on Friday, Steve Phelps mentioned that they are close to signing a fourth manufacturer, that he's cautiously optimistic about that. Now, who could this manufacturer be? There's a bunch of different names that people throw out all the time. Is it going to be Dodge? Listen, Dodge doesn't want to be in NASCAR the same way that Zach Bryan doesn't want to be in a relationship. They seem like they want to. They tease about it, but ultimately, they don't want to be a part of it. If Dodge wanted to be here, they would be here, but they don't. And Stellantis is hemorrhaging money right now. From a marketing standpoint, it doesn't really make any sense since they got rid of their internal combustion engines for the meantime. Obviously, the new Charger will come out with a V6, the Hurricane engine, I believe is what they're referring to it as, in the future, but will only be sold as an EV currently. So there's not really a platform for them to market in NASCAR. Now, they could, of course, they're in drag racing, so anything's possible. But for the most part, it doesn't really align with their business interests right now. And like I said, Stellantis is hemorrhaging money, and taking on a full-time NASCAR factory effort isn't going to work. I mean, there's a reason why they exited the sport in 2012 and couldn't find anybody to run their Gen 6 car in the Cup Series. It's because they didn't want to pay anybody to do it, or at least not a substantial amount of money. So go ahead and kick Dodge to the curb. They're not going to be here. Now there's the topic of Nissan. Listen, I've seen some of these guys, some of these fellas drive their Nissan Altimas down 75, and I believe some of them could win Cup Series races right now just based on speed at the rate that they are driving. A Nissan Altima is just doing its best Hellcat impression every single time it gets on the highway. I don't know what it is, but as soon as Nissan Altimas hit the highway, foot to the floor as fast as we can go, which ultimately isn't that fast in the grand scheme of things, but when the rest of traffic's moving at 75 mile per hour and you're moving at 125 mile per hour, there's a bit of a difference there. Nissan, ultimately, they're not going to join NASCAR. Anytime Nissan seems to take on a new racing endeavor, they try to reinvent the wheel and they ultimately fail at it. So go ahead and push them to the side as well. They're kind of in the Stellantis boat. They are wanting to do a business with Stellantis, and that's what happens when that goes on. You fail ultimately. Kia flirted with NASCAR back in 2019. I don't know if a lot of people remember that, but they went to Toyota and they were like, hey, what does it take to do this? And Toyota was like, does this realistically make sense for you? And I don't think that was them trying to big dick them in any sort of way or big brother them. It's more of like, this is a big time financial investment. Like, you have to be willing to commit 8 to 10 years of what they told Kia and spend a lot of money to become successful at it. I mean, think about it. Toyota didn't win their first championship in the NASCAR Cup Series until 2015 with Kyle Busch. Like, they were in the sport for a solid 8 to 9 years before that happened. And realistically, I just really don't want to see a Kia K5 out there. But if they want to come in and spend the money, I'm open for it. And then, of course, there's Honda. Honda is the rumored manufacturer that could be joining NASCAR as the fourth manufacturer. They've been flirting with NASCAR for some time now. They had conversations last year, seems to have carried over into this year as well. One of the biggest holdups with Honda is they don't want to build a V8. They don't want to build a pushrod V8 to compete with what Chevy, Ford, and Toyota currently have. They would rather come in with a turbo V6 of some sort, which makes sense from a marketing platform and from a road use platform. Obviously, they're not going to slap what they use in the Cup Series into one of their road cars, but they at least have a blueprint behind that from their Acura GTP stuff and other forms of racing. So there's a little bit there for them. NASCAR ran a torque sensor on Martin Truex Jr.'s car back at Richmond, and that was, as NASCAR said, to kind of get a baseline. Ultimately, it's to find out sort of what type of power that V8 is putting down, and then if they can, figure out a way to get the V6 to do sort of the same thing. Now, fans aren't going to be happy about that. Listen, I am V8s for life. Like, I want V8s in NASCAR. I want them to stay. Ultimately, we know those days are numbered. They're closer to the end of their life than they were at the beginning. I don't want to see them go away. I think it'd be really intriguing to see a turbo V6 versus a naturally aspirated V8. I think that is something that would be pretty cool. Now, to get Honda to come in, they're going to have to make some sort of concession here at NASCAR, that is, in terms of engine regulations. Honda's willing to spend money. They have a lot of money to spend, and if they pull out of IndyCar, like is currently rumored, then that opens up a lot of budget for them to possibly come and join NASCAR. A Honda factory effort would be really good for the sport. I know people don't want to see another foreign manufacturer come in. I understand that people don't like that. It's fine. Like, we're just going to have to get over that because the American brands are already here, or they don't want to be here. So we need to just accept anybody that wants to be here at this point. Anybody that wants to put money into the sport, yeah, come on in, because more factory teams, it means more competition on the racetrack. More money coming into the sport is always a good thing. I have zero problem with that. Honda, obviously, is probably the favorite in the clubhouse to be that fourth manufacturer, but probably not until like 26 at the earliest, probably even 27, maybe even 28 at this point. Ty Majeski picked up his first NASCAR Truck Series championship on Friday night in Phoenix in dominating fashion. He gets the pole. He leads 132 of 150 laps. His average running position in this race was first. Like, he just was always up front. He had 4 green flag passes this entire race because he dominated it that much. He goes on to win his first Truck Series championship, another championship for ThorSport. There's 6 in the Truck Series, an absolutely dominating performance. And Ty Majeski is a deserving champion. He's come a long way since he was wrecking that number 60 car that he was sharing with Austin Cindric and Cole Custer over at Roush Fenway Keselowski Racing back in 2018, I believe. The guy has a ton of speed and really just needed an opportunity and the right team to be able to showcase that. And thankfully, ThorSport gave him that opportunity. He's one of the most accomplished short track racers in the country, one of the most accomplished iRacing drivers in the entire world. And he continued to just race off of a single monitor with a Logitech wheel hooked up to like his computer desk and the cheapest pedals you've ever seen and kick everybody's ass. And all these people have these huge rigs, multi-$1,000 rigs, and Majeski's just sitting there in his kitchen. Like, it's crazy. The guy is supremely talented, and he kind of bounced around. He mentioned that too in his post race that he had the opportunity at Roush Racing, didn't work out for him. He goes over and runs at Nice in the Truck Series. In 2020, had a really good shot of winning that race at Pocono, ultimately crashes and then doesn't make it through the whole season with them. Hires on at ThorSport as an engineer. They work him into a couple races, finally get him into the truck full time, and it pays off. In his 3rd season with them, he goes to the top of the championship stage, picking up that first win. Obviously, earlier in the week, there's a bit of controversy around him missing media days on Tuesday to go vote. Unfortunate headlines for NASCAR that came out of that. It really seems like the team just didn't effectively communicate to NASCAR that that's what Majeski was doing on Tuesday rather. So hopefully all of that gets cleared up. But the actual race on Friday night, it's Phoenix, right? So you have to kind of temper expectations and assume that the race isn't really going to be that good. It was a 2-horse race the entire night. It was either going to be Corey Heim or it was going to be Ty Majeski. And Majeski just a flat short track with he and Joe Shear. Yeah, that's what it's always going to be. Majeski wins. Corey Heim comes home second. Christian Eck is third. Grant Enfinger down in 5th. But for Heim, or for Majeski, it's a great win. It's his 3rd win of the season. He has 10 top 5s on the season, 14 top 10s. But when you look at what Corey Heim and Christian Eckes specifically did, this is where people have a problem with the playoff format. Christian Eckes had an all-time Truck Series season. 4 wins, 15 top 5 finishes, 22 top 10 finishes. They only raced 23 times in the Truck Series. He's the first driver in NASCAR history to only miss finishing the top 10 by 1 race over the course of the entire season. Absolutely incredible run for Christian Eckes. Ultimately, though, it's a 1-race championship, and you have to perform in that final race. Then you look at a guy like Corey Heim, who had 6 wins this season, led the Truck Series in win total, and ultimately they all get beat by a guy that got his way into that championship 4 race because Christian Eckes bodied Taylor Gray up and out of the way last weekend in Martinsville. If Christian Eckes doesn't do that to Taylor Gray, and Taylor Gray goes on to win that race, locks himself into the Final 4 at Phoenix, Ty Majeski is not part of this Final 4. Ty Majeski does not have the opportunity to race for a championship. If Christian Eckes doesn't move Taylor Gray last week and Taylor Gray goes on to win, it still doesn't affect Christian Eckes' championship status. He still doesn't win a title. Ultimately, it probably goes to Corey Heim still, just because Heim beat him out in the finishing order. But it's always funny how things like that work out. The rest of the day, though, Heim got called for a restart violation, and he did move down about a car length before, truck length rather, before the start finish line. NASCAR moved him to the back of the field, and then the ensuing restarts, he was able to absolutely capitalize. He went from 19th to 10th, and then 10th back up to 3rd in the matter of like 2 or 3 restarts and just a handful of laps. And I'm sure Joe Shear and that entire ThorSport team was like, holy crap, like this is not what we wanted. We thought that this was going to be a cakewalk from here. It really was kind of a cakewalk there at the end of the race. Majeski was just so much better than everyone else. And Heim got out and was just like, yeah, dude, we just didn't have anything for him. Yeah, not the best race that we've ever seen by any means. An intriguing champion. I think Ty Majeski is absolutely deserving of a championship. He is a guy that is an absolute wheelman as well. The trophy's just about as big as him. He's a tiny guy. Hopefully that maybe this opens up more doors for him in the future, maybe to go up to the Xfinity Series and kind of see what he can do. Because like I said, super talented driver. Corey Heim will be back in the Truck Series next year. We'll get to see if he can win a championship in his 3rd attempt there. Eck of course, is moving up, and Finger will be back as well. So the Truck Series really could set up next year to be a pretty good battle between Heim and Majeski and some of the others that will be over there. But for now, Ty Majeski is your 2024 NASCAR Craftsman Truck Series champion. Sometimes in life, if you just say stuff enough times, you can start to convince yourself that it was real. And I think Christopher Bell maybe has done that over the last week after the Martinsville race manipulation fiasco that we had last Sunday. Bell, of course, got knocked out of the playoffs and taken out of the Championship 4 after NASCAR deemed that he pulled a Ross Chastain, that he rode the wall, which is against NASCAR rules for safety reasons, which is absolutely true. But on Saturday, a typically well-mannered, pretty reserved Christopher Bell came out swinging in Phoenix during the press availability before Sunday's NASCAR Cup Series championship race, where he said, quote, "I feel cheated. I feel cheated out of a chance to compete for a championship. It all stems from what happened earlier with 15, 20 laps to go. Whenever the race got fixed and manipulated by Chevrolet, that forced our hands to do what we did. Ultimately, it forced me into a mistake on the last lap to get into the wall, and I feel like I should never have been in that position. Had the race been ran fairly, the 24 car would have lost enough spots to get me into the final race." Don't disagree with what he's saying there. Bell ultimately says NASCAR should have put him into the Championship 4. This is what Jeff Gluck says. He says what he did with the wall ride was not a, quote, move, because his intention was never to ride the wall, nor did he gain an advantage. Now, he did not gain an advantage. That is true. He did not gain an advantage, but he still put the car against the wall, still gassed up, and still rode the wall, which is against NASCAR rules. People all the time are like, NASCAR needs to be consistent on their calls. They were consistent in this situation. They said after the Ross Chastain incident, that's never going to happen again. It happened in a partial sense, and they went ahead and said, yeah, not going to happen. And they moved Christopher Bell back 4 spots to being the last car 1 lap down in the running order, which took him out of the Championship 4. Now, for him to say that he feels cheated, well, yeah, I mean, Chevrolet cheated. That's clear. NASCAR penalized them for that, but Toyota also cheated as well. They found whatever they found on the 23 car when they tore it down, plus the radio communications, was enough for NASCAR to be like, yeah, there was clear intention for the 23 to drop back so that the 20 could get in front. And that's what happened. It's not that you guys didn't cheat. You did cheat. You just happened to cheat after the fact that the Chevrolets cheated. So it's a real toss-up there. And for him to say that he feels cheated, well, yeah, but how do you think other drivers feel as well? Because some guys got screwed over by what the Chevrolets did. Some people got screwed over by what Toyota was trying to do. Ultimately, William Byron gets put into the Championship 4, and Christopher Bell does not get to race for a championship. Taking the cheating thing out of the situation, he still went in and rode the wall. So that's the penalty for him. He didn't get penalized for them cheating. And I understand him talking about basically this kind of being a domino effect, and the reason why he had to go into the corner and ride against the wall and do what he did to pass the 23 without the Chevrolets, stacking up behind the 24 William Byron. He wouldn't have to do that. I get it, but we're not dealing in hypotheticals here. Like, we're dealing in what actually happened, and that's what happened for Christopher Bell. So yeah, he can feel cheated, but ultimately they cheated the same way that the 1 and the 3 cheated too. I do think it's funny how all the people involved in the race manipulation scandal are all just pointing fingers at each other, being like, we didn't do it. It's like the Spider-Man meme. Austin and Dillon being like, I'm just a country boy. I don't know nothing about no numbers and points and stuff, which I actually slightly believe that. But they all knew what was going on here. Like, there was an understanding, even on the Toyota side, there's an understanding that when they're talking about points on the radio, guess what? They're saying that for a reason. And that's to either not pass or to, hey, drop back and allow this car to pass you. So at the end of the day, everybody cheated here. And I think NASCAR got the calls right. It's unfortunate that they even had to deal with this. But yeah, Christopher Bell got penalized for riding the wall, which NASCAR has said is not going to happen going forward. And it didn't. Moving on to another, his teammate rather, on the Joe Gibbs Racing side, Denny Hamlin, owner of 23XI Racing, was asked by Dustin Long of NBC Sports on Saturday if 23XI Racing will be at the Clash and the Daytona 500, and Denny said TBD, which means to be determined for the people that have never understood or heard that acronym before. Yeah, I'm curious about that as well. 23XI Racing will ultimately be at the Daytona 500. Will they be at the Clash? If they're racing as an open car, I feel like they will not be there at all, unless their sponsors are like, you got to go to this event. Because that's a race that doesn't pay much money. Everybody lost money going out to Los Angeles last year, or the last few years, to race at the Coliseum. Yeah, Bowman Gray's kind of right in their backyard up in Winston-Salem. Yeah, it's not going to cost that much. Everybody's going to be able to drive up day of and then drive back, but it doesn't pay like the Daytona 500 pays. Daytona 500's biggest paying race of the year. Fully expect 23XI Racing to be there. Now, will they be there with 2 cars, with 3 cars, or 4 cars, as was originally planned before all the charter stuff started to happen? That's kind of up in the air. Obviously, they're supposed to enter an open car for Martin Truex Jr. Now it seems like they're all going to be open cars, at least as it currently stands, pending their appeal for their loss of the request for an injunction that happened on Friday. We'll have to wait and see, but I would imagine that at least 2 of their cars are going to be in Daytona. The third car, Riley Herbst, however that's going to pan out, again, would expect them to be there just because it is the highest paying race of the season. Now, for other races that they have on the schedule, are they going to go out to Phoenix or Las Vegas early in the season? I don't know about that. That's a lot of travel. That's a big expense to go out there. Or do they just hang around and race, in Atlanta, to wait for Richmond and Bristol, Martinsville, Homestead to come around and kind of stay just on the East Coast? It seems like something that maybe could happen here, barring whatever the outcome of their court case is. So let me know in the comments what you thought about who could potentially be the 4th OEM in NASCAR. Ty Majeski absolutely dominating the Truck Series championship, as well as Christopher Bell's comments and Denny Hamlin's comments on the Daytona 500, 23XI Racing, possibly, maybe not being there. Like and subscribe to the channel. Follow me on TikTok at BreakHard, Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook at BreakHardBlog.